right, so you can see it now?
Yes, it looks good.
Thank you. I've got some kind of lunch and learn thing going on. That is too weird. All right, so today we are talking about managing combativeness in dementia care. Jamie had mentioned earlier, we've been doing a few programs with the local area agency on aging, and we actually have a program that is specific to managing physical behaviors. We have a program that is specific to managing emotional behaviors. And I think we have done those in the past. They're on our YouTube channel as well. If that's something that you're interested in, we have a YouTube channel that has all of our programs on it that we have recorded. If you were on last month's Lunch and Learn, when I had technical difficulties and we couldn't see the slides, we're actually doing that program, that trauma-informed program. That's the one Jamie was talking about on April 12th from 2 to 3. We'll be doing that one again. And the slides will be working. Watch I say that and we'll see what happens. Okay, so let's get started. Here's our objectives. We're going to talk about why these challenging behaviors occur. I think that's important for us to understand, not to just go in and go, okay, so how do I fix it? Let's talk about why they occur first. So we're going to talk about that. Signs to look for, and then steps of intervention. So let's look at what is combativeness in dementia and what in the world is going on. Look at this statistic. Approximately 90% of people with dementia will be combative at some point during the disease. Now, look when that normally takes place, during ADL time. And ADL is activities of daily living. So grooming, bathing, dressing, mealtime, toileting, those things that we do every day. Now, let's stop for just a minute. 90%. So almost everybody, even people who've never, ever been combative, said a bad word in their life, they've been gentle, they've always been laid back. 90% of people, though, at some point during the disease is going to become combative, and that could be physical or verbal, during an activity of daily living. Now think about, why would it happen then? Why would it happen when all you're trying to do is help them? Now, if we reason that out, how long have they been doing these things for themselves? Grooming, bathing, toileting, dressing, feeding myself. From the time they were 2 or 3, that's in long-term memory. I don't need your help. I know what I'm doing. And maybe they're leaving steps out. Or maybe they're getting the sequence, maybe they're getting it out of order, but they're not seeing it that way. And we're coming in and trying to help. And many times, we're going to talk about today, is our approach or our tone, our facial expression, or our gestures that can actually set off the behavior. We would never do it on purpose, but that's why you do classes like this, so that you can educate yourself. Physical aggression can look like anything from hitting, pushing, kicking, spitting, grabbing, throwing. And there's verbal aggression, where somebody becomes agitated. They start repeating words or questions over and over. They may be demanding attention. They may be shouting, and they may be using curse words, racial slurs, sex talk, words that they never, ever would have used during a time when we are simply trying to help them. So we're going to look at, why does that happen? And then we're going to talk about interventions for some specific behaviors, things that you can try that might work. And just because they don't work today, doesn't mean they won't work tomorrow. And then something that works today might not work tomorrow. Let's look at why this is happening. Look at what's going on there in the brain. Now, this particular brain is one of somebody with Alzheimer's disease, but we know that the atrophy is across all of the dementias. We know there's over 100 different types of dementias, close to over 130 different types of dementia. Alzheimer's is the most common type, kind, or form of dementia. About 70% of all dementias is Alzheimer's disease. Now look at that brain there that says normal, that brain on the left. That is a 3-pound brain. That's what our brain should look like today. That's a normal brain. That brain on the right is a 1-pound brain. Look at the difference. How can we expect the person on the right to act like the person on the left? They can't. They would if they could, but they can't. What you're seeing there is atrophy. That brain is shrinking, and that brain, as you can see, literally has holes in it. This is brain failure. So where you or I have that filter that says, don't do that, don't say that, don't throw, don't hit, don't kick, don't spit, that filter goes away. And in some people, it goes away in the earlier stages of the disease, and they may become combative. I wanted to add this slide because this is a really good teaching slide. There's a lot of information on it. You're going to get these slides, like I said earlier, like Jamie said, but this is a really good slide for you to look at and understand as the brain. So there's the real brain right there. That's his actual brains we're looking at here. As the brain is dying, and you can see that it's starting to lose these holes that are here, and it's shrinking. Well, you look at the areas of the brain, and what do those areas of the brain control? So I'm just going to point out a couple of them, especially the frontal and the temporal parts of the brain, the frontal part and the temporal parts, because with everybody, as that brain begins to atrophy, it's starting to shrink down. Well, look at what all is controlled up in that frontal part of the brain. Personality, emotions, arousal, intelligence. Now look at this one. The awareness of what's going on around you and voluntary movement. So that's some of our filter going on. The ability to speak and write, and big one, behavior control. Filter, our behavior control. Don't do that, don't say that. Yes, do that, yes, say that. It's going away. They can't act like the person with the 3-pound brain when they are moving towards a 1-pound brain. Now let's look in the temporal areas. The ability to understand language. So they may be hearing it, but they're not understanding what we're saying to them. And it may be something that they've done many, many times, but now they don't understand the language we're using. That's where we have to change as the caregiver. We have to change in our approach. We accommodate the disease. They can't. They would if they could. We accommodate. Also here in the temporal areas, organization and planning, and look again, behavior and emotions. I really wanted to point those out. You can look at the other areas of the brain there and see what's controlled in what area. So again, why do people impacted by dementia have these challenging behaviors? Now keep this in mind also. All behavior is a form of communication. They're trying to get, and they are expressing an unmet need. We've got to figure out what that is. Regardless of what it is. I watched a gentleman one time walk right up to a mop bucket, pick it up and throw it and just keep going. He was moving the mop bucket. You or I would have either pushed it out of the way, we would have walked around it. He picked it up and threw it. He wasn't mad. He wasn't angry. He was moving the mop bucket. Now, whose fault was that? If there's any fault, that's mine. That's ours for leaving it out. And assuming that he would act like somebody with a 3-pound brain when he can't. He moved it the best way he knew how. But we could go, oh, that's a challenging behavior. He's throwing things. Well, why did he throw it? And we're actually going to look at a tool for you that you will get when you get this slide show that's going to help you go back and start to decode why somebody might do some of the things that they do. So it's a great tool. Typically, challenging behaviors occur because the person is frightened or frustrated, and it comes out as anger. Anger is the easiest emotion. As a therapist, that's one of the things that you're taught very early, is that anger is the easiest emotion for most people to have. That's why we have so many anger management classes, because anger's easy. Think about that 2-3-year-old that has those temper tantrums. They're not in control yet of their emotions, and anger's easy. I'm frustrated, I'm out of control. Well, it looks very different when it's a 2-year-old doing it compared to when it's an 80-year-old doing it. It's the same thing. I'm out of control and I'm afraid. That most common trigger is during care time. We said that because they're confused. They're not understanding that we're trying to help. They also could be experiencing, and we'll talk more about delusions, hallucinations, and paranoia, and the difference in those. So the delusion, just briefly, is when they can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And the hallucinations is the perception of something that's not present. And keep in mind, hallucinations, delusions, they're not all just visual. They can be auditory. They can even smell or even touch things that aren't there, but they believe it. And now think of, again, of what's going on in their brain. Another reason somebody might be combative is because they're bored or because they're lonely. This is another picture of some brains, and this is looking top down so you can see the difference in a 3-pound and a 1-pound brain. Listed some other reasons that someone might be combative, and I put in red and in bold print there, pain. Pain. Okay. So you may have figured out already in your journey with dementia that when you go up and you ask someone if they're in pain, many times with a furrowed brow and a frown on their face, they may say, no. Well, now what did they just really tell you? Yes. But the word no came out. We learned the word no first. No was one of our first words. For most people, it probably was one of the first 5 words they learned. And I'm saying the same thing. I said, are you in pain? Can I get you something? No. Leave me alone. I'm in so much pain. That's what I'm saying. We've got to become detectives. We've got to learn to decode the behavior. And we'll look at what pain can look like with somebody who's becoming combative. Somebody may become combative because they're overstimulated. There's too much noise. There's too many activities for so many people. This happens around the holidays, or it happens when somebody's trying to have a birthday celebration. And maybe for the first time, they see a challenging behavior. They're going, I don't know what happened. We were just having their birthday party. Well, how many people were there? How much noise? Were there balloons? What kind of lighting was going on? Were they off of their routine that day? Well, why in the world did they have that behavior? There was an unmet need. Their need was, I need my routine, and there's too many people here. I don't know who all these people are. The lights are too much. There's music, there's sound. I've had a whole lot to eat, and I'm off of my routine. And I don't have the ability to say, I'm really overstimulated in this moment and I need to kind of go sit and be quiet somewhere. But I can hit, kick, pinch, bite, scream, spit. So I'm out of control. They may have just misinterpreted what we said. That's another cause for being combative. Remember that we looked at the brain earlier? There's that part of the brain that actually is dying and going away that interprets what do words mean. They may not be understanding what the words mean. They may be reacting to being treated like a child. We're going to look at some more of those. They may have been startled There might be conflict, or they may feel like there's conflict, and they may have a desire to leave. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depends on how you look at it, many times this combative behavior, either we cause, again, not intentionally, or the environment does, the environment around them. So we're going to learn some ways to get on top of it before it happens. We don't even want it to get there. We want to stop it before it gets there. It's pretty common when a person's in a new environment for them to have some combative behavior. Maybe they've moved out of the home for the first time. Maybe they're in the hospital. Hospital's the worst place that we want somebody to be with dementia. They may be at a doctor's office and feel like people are talking about them instead of to them, and you get an unwanted or a challenging behavior. There's pain again, any type of pain. This can be toothache, this can be a blister on their foot, but it's a pain. UTIs, number one, urinary tract infections, and that's such a unique type of pain that it's hard for them to explain and tell us what's going on. When I used to work at the Alzheimer's Association, I would work the hotline one day a week where people call in and they ask questions. There wasn't a day go by that I did not get at least one call of somebody saying that for the first time, their loved one hit, kick, punch, spit, cursed. And the first thing we always told them to do was get a UA, a urinalysis, to see if they had a UTI. First thing. So physical problems are there as well, boredom and loneliness again, and then there's that negative approach from a caregiver. So keep this in mind. It takes about 72 hours for anyone to adjust to a new place, a new room, a new facility. That's for all of us too. It takes us about 72 hours to kind of settle into a new place. Same thing with a person with dementia. If they move into a new facility, if they have to change rooms or change floors or change houses, wings, units, whatever they're called, it's going to take about 72 hours on average for them to kind of settle into the spot. But then keep this in mind also. It takes 28 to 30 days to make or break a habit. 28 to 30 days to make or break a habit. Again, that's for all of us. It's the same thing for someone with dementia. So when somebody first moves into a facility, I always tell the families, give them that full 30 days to completely settle it. This is new. It's a new routine. It's new faces. So they may act out, or what we would call acting out, but why are they doing it? Unmet need. I'm not understanding what's happened. These aren't the same faces. This doesn't smell the same. It doesn't look the same. The food doesn't taste the same. There's all kinds of things because they're settling in. So about 72 hours for the first adjustment, and then about 30 days. Now that's average. That means there's always going to be some people that it may take them 8 weeks. And then there's those people that move right in. They think they're on a cruise ship and life is good. That happens. I gave the example of somebody using the word no instead of yes with pain. I watched someone who had gout one time to the point that his knee looked like it was about the size of a basketball. It was so hot, you could feel the heat coming off of it. He was dragging his leg, and I watched a CNA go up and say to this particular gentleman, "Does your knee hurt?" And he said, "No." He was saying, "Yes, my knee is killing me." So don't ever just take, well, they said no, they didn't have a headache. Watch them, watch their body language. Here's some signs to look for. Anybody who has a clenched fist, and the two that I look for the most are the furrowed brow. Anytime we have a furrowed brow, something's going on, and a deep frown or a scowl. Furrowed brow and the scowl, something's going on. Rapid eye movements, maybe muttering under their breath. They may already be yelling. Pacing. There's a difference in wandering and pacing. Wandering is not causing any harm. Wandering is just walking around and looking, but pacing is very different. Banging the table, pulling on a door, grabbing, waving arms, kicking legs. Now, some of the things that we can do, I want to just throw in right here to prevent injury, are just things that we need to think of that are pretty common sense. We've got to be careful about the jewelry we're wearing. A lot of our rings have sharp edges on them. Be careful with that. We can unintentionally hurt someone and then they become combative. I have done this myself. I have been walking with a resident. Their skin was very, very thin. And as we were going down the hallway, she was just getting the skin tear right up her arm. Be very careful with your jewelry. Don't wear necklaces. Necklaces can be grabbed and hoop earrings can be grabbed. Same thing with open-toed shoes. And anytime that somebody looks like they're kind of ramping up to what could be combative, back up. We want to make sure and always give them plenty of space between us. And again, we're going to talk about some specifics. I do want to go through and touch on each of the stages, early, mid, and late, and some of the things we might see there as far as combative behavior and why it would happen. So if you look at this first one, earlier in the disease, you'll see some people who it's the inability to accept that they have a condition that matches up with their symptoms. So this is where many times families will say, my dad won't even admit that he has this, or mom acts like she doesn't know that she has it. Well, maybe she doesn't know that she has it. And so why are you treating me in a different way when there's nothing wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with me. It's you. Some of you may have heard those very words. I don't have anything going on with me. You must have something going on with you. And this can turn into a really challenging behavior if we're not careful right here. Now, think about what's going on. In the early stage of the disease, I've got the word normalization there. We want to keep things as normal as possible, and we want to make sure and keep their dignity intact and keep independence, as much of it and as long as possible. And we can sweep in and start trying to do too much too soon and be the cause of some of this behavior. Instead of going into the bathroom and taking everything out of there, let's do it a little bit at a time. Instead of completely getting rid of their stack of newspapers that they've had by their chair, let's take out 2 a day for a while. That can cause, that's environment and that's us, that can cause a behavior because there's nothing wrong with me. And they don't think there's anything going on. Some other early stage challenges, again, there's that denial and the lack of self-awareness. That was part of what's going on in that frontal part of the brain where I'm not even aware. It's truly a lack of self-awareness because they lose the ability to do that. The resistance to care we've brought up, and that'll come up over and over because we'll see so much of the challenging behaviors and combativeness during care time. Frustration, agitation, wanting things to stay the same. I don't want it to change. Day-to-day experience of memory loss. Think about this early on when they know. So there's those that don't know, and they truly don't know. And then there's those that they know. And they realize it every day that it's getting worse. And that's scary, and that's fear, and fear can lead to, in many people, anger. Easiest emotion. And at the root of anger, 9 times out of 10 is fear. When you dig down into anger, what's really going on here, it's almost always fear. So early in the disease, when we're seeing combativeness, especially in somebody who's not been that way before, a lot of times it's fear, depression that goes right with this hand in hand. because sometimes we can get somebody started on an antidepressant and it completely changes combative behaviors early in the disease. Some other early stage things that we can find. So prevention, some of the things we want to do to prevent, that's our goal, is to prevent it from getting to the point that they're combative. Maintaining structure, making sure that we have that routine, but again, keeping it as normal as possible. We're not going to go in and make sweeping changes. We do want to simplify the environment a little at a time. Early in the disease, we can do written reminders because most people early in the disease can still read and comprehend. There's going to come a time where they'll be able to read the words, but they won't comprehend what the words say. That's going to be more in the mid stage. And then giving that positive reinforcement. To respond, we're going to start watching for frustration early. We know our loved one better than anybody else does. We know our residents better. For those of you that are professionals, and we start looking for that frustration so that we can get on top of it before it gets out of hand. We're never going to test somebody's memory. I've seen some horrible, horrible, challenging behaviors because someone comes up and says something like, "Do you know who I am?" Or, "Who am I?" Now imagine somebody doing that to you. And you know that you know, but you don't know. And it's easier to just curse, hit. They're using the words they have left. That left side language leaves, left language leaves, that goes away first. That's our day-to-day language. That right remains. And unfortunately, over here on the right is where we store curse words, sex talk, and racial slurs. They'll use words they've never used before, but we can trigger that. Don't test their memory. There's no reason to do that. And then we talked about treating depression. Let's look a little bit at the moderate stage. And the moderate stage is what we call the supportive stage. This is now where we're going to come alongside, still providing that dignity and independence, but we're needing some help now. So here's some of the behaviors you may start to see. And again, I'm not reading these slides to you. You're getting these slides. I'm using these as an outline, and I've got to get going faster because we got started about 8 or 10 minutes late because of my technology. So again, middle stage of the disease, as the disease progresses, this is where, look at the first bullet point, difficult behaviors will start to occur or occur more often in the middle stage with most people. We tend to see more in the middle stage. What's going on with the brain in this middle stage? We're well into the disease. We've got a lot of damage. And so we will see more challenging behaviors. Now, again, this is on average. At this point, they're needing more hands-on care and supervision. And we have to have that constant routine. We do have to give them the right to say no. And we need to learn to also just let some things go. Middle stage of the disease, we learn to let some things go, but they won't take off their boots when they get in the bed. Let them sleep in their boots. They've worn that same sweater for 3 days and they wear it for a 4th. We truly have to make some decisions. Choose your battles. When we start letting some of that go, our life gets better, their life gets better. If they are arguing with you about the bath and bathing becomes an issue with most everybody, then we are probably going to back off and try this again later and not force it right now. Anytime we try to force something is when we're setting ourselves up for a challenging, combative behavior. If there's an activity or something that they don't want to do right now and you can't coerce them into doing it, and we're going to give some tips on how to get them to do it, different ways, things to try, then we're going to back off and try again later. One of the things that most people with dementia need is they need stimulation. They need to stay busy. They need to feel like they have a purpose and that they are needed. So allow them to do activities that we do every day, like folding clothes, washing dishes, rummaging or tinkering in a toolbox or a sewing kit, You choose what's in those boxes, but they need to be busy sorting papers, using a paper shredder for you. I have this pile of papers I'm really needed shredded. Could you sit here and shred them for me? I have a purpose. I have a meaning. And keep in mind also, they're not being difficult on purpose. They can't control what they are doing. If they could, they would. And you'll hear us say, and it's also on one of these slides, a person with dementia is not giving you a hard time. The person with dementia is having a hard time. Got it on a sign right here in my office. They're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time. So for prevention in the mid stage, we're going to break those steps down into much smaller steps. We may just have to do one thing at a time. And we're going to provide verbal reminders. We're probably past written reminders, even if they can still read the words, because they're going to be able to read words, but not comprehend what they're reading. We've got to start giving a lot of reassurance and simple answers. This is where we start to lose our adjectives and our adverbs. Let those go and just break those answers down to a small answer. Also in the middle stage is when it's a good idea to start bringing in home and community-based services, looking into respite, either respite for people to come into your home or respite where your loved one goes and stays somewhere for a few days so that you get a break and they get a break. This is where many people will start using an adult day program, home health, bringing therapy in so that there's those extra eyes, ears, hands, but we're starting to build that support team. We're going to have a support team going forward. So late stage of the disease is what we call the sensory stage. They're communicating through their senses and we can communicate with them through their senses. So during the later stage of the disease, here's some things that we may see start to change. You see it says on there, talk constantly, but a lot of times that talk is word salad or where we're getting lots of da, 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 and then we'll get a word mixed in there somewhere where we can get down to maybe 10 words or fewer. As the disease continues to progress at the late stage, they're going to get to the point where they're kind of semi-alert, they're immobile, they're completely incontinent, and they may not even be having what we call behaviors at this stage in the disease, but we may call them issues or we may call them challenges that just come along with progression of the disease. Remember, this is for us to remember because we're not going to use that word with somebody with dementia ever. We don't use the word remember ever. But for us to remember, they're working with a brain that is failing them. They're doing the best they can with what they have left. They are going back to what we originally were. We were not talking. We were not feeding ourselves. We weren't walking. We weren't toileting ourselves. Retrogenesis. They're going back. So managing late stage behaviors, prevention, this is where we have to pay attention to their nonverbal signs at this stage in the disease, late in the disease. And then for distraction, compassionate touch goes a long, long way. And compassionate touch many times is palm to palm, where we are holding hands with someone and we may be doing something as simple as listening to music or just touching them. The same things that we might do with a very, very young child. Because think about what touch represents. In most people, touch represents safety, care, and concern. And we tend to stop touching people in the late stage of the disease, and that's when they need it the most. It can help with challenging behaviors. Touching someone on their face, holding their hands, stroking. We have to learn what the emotion is, and then I put in red there to refocus and make a connection. We want to make that connection. They are most definitely still there. We just have to connect with them. So steps for intervention. There's usually 4 things that we can distract a person with that is either kind of moving into maybe a combative or a challenging behavior. And this is throughout the stages of the disease. especially earlier and mid stage. I've got 4 pictures there, and I've got food. And one of those is the sweeter, the better. A person with dementia, their taste is changing. And so we want to I say ice cream is God's gift to dementia. I also put in red there, people with dementia can only hold one thought at a time. So distracting them with another thought eliminates what was upsetting them from the beginning. But one of the things we also have to do is we have to leave this place. Because if I'm upset right here in this part of this room, then I need to have that ice cream over there in that room. Or I may go into a loop where I loop right back to I'm upset right here in this room. Music, children, and pets. And if you don't have real little children or pets, YouTube. Go to YouTube and look up children laughing. Some of the best videos you can watch. Or look up baby animals. That's some fantastic 3-minute videos, so it's short attention span. We want to make sure to always have our hands at our side and watch that we don't have an aggressive stance and to only have one person at a time talking. Now, some of these that I put in here, we are not going to go, this has a lot of slides that we're not going to go through every one of these slides. I put this on here for your information because this is an hour program and we can't go over every single challenging behavior. So I'm just going to touch on some and then you'll have the chance to go back and reread some of this. But one of the things with interventions to inability to understand is to explain what we're going to do before we do it. Use those simple steps and then allow time. This is huge because you'll notice that it says on there, allow up to 20 seconds. And people think they're doing 20 seconds when they're not doing 20 seconds because we're going to see what 20 seconds is. It can take up to 20 seconds for a person with dementia to hear what you said, process what you said, and then start to do what you said. So it may be as something as lift your arms, like we're getting ready to put on a coat, put on a jacket, put on a shirt. Now, I'm going to set my phone here for 20 seconds. Or let's use this one. Sit here. I'm using 2 words. My voice is up. I'm patting the chair. Sit here. And let's wait 20 seconds. Listen how long this is. Okay. Sit here. That's 10. That's it. Now think what most of us would have done several times during that 20 seconds. We might even ramp up to, I said, sit down. And then we wonder why we got a challenging behavior. When they're still processing, sit here. 20 seconds is a long time. Give them the time. I watched a woman fall. I watched the video of it. She fell on her face. She fell and then put her arms out. Her brain didn't tell her she was falling until she'd already hit the ground. 20 seconds. Interventions for a difficult task. We've got some things on here, again, breaking it down into simple steps and allowing them to complete that first step before going on to the next one. That inability to communicate. This is one of the big ones. They get very, very frustrated because they can't express their needs. And this is common in the early to mid stages, and it can also be embarrassing. So they may start using the word thing and stuff a lot. You know, the thing, and the stuff, you know, that stuff and the stuff, and I need that, the thing and the stuff. So we can then say, show me the thing. Show me the stuff. What does the thing do? What does the stuff look like? Point to the thing. Earlier in the disease, they can do that. They may still be able to say, you know, that thing that writes, but they can't find the word pen or pencil. So if we will just use show me the thing instead of I'm looking for everything you can't, they're reading my tone. I'm starting this argument, and they may respond with a hit, a kick, a punch, a spit, because they're using what they have left. This is interventions for verbal aggression. And again, we've talked a lot about those forbidden words that stay and why they may do it. We talked about the frontal lobe of the brain is what is damaged, and it controls personality and judgment. And so when that part is damaged, and it's going to be damaged in everybody, and especially in those that have frontotemporal dementia, then we may see more of this earlier. So when they get frustrated, angry, or fearful, many times they respond in a way that to us is inappropriate. To them, it's appropriate because they're trying to get their needs met. We cannot take those words personally, even if they're using our name in the sentence, because we can't react to words. We have to respond to the emotion. We can't react to the word. We respond to the emotion. We've got to redirect the conversation away from the comments. But if we use validation therapy, I know it. I'm scared right now too. This is horrible, where we're repeating back their feeling many times. Even in the midst of them being very upset, it can get them to start to settle down. Now, if someone is yelling, screaming, crying, that is usually due to frustration and the inability to get needs met. This is common during ADL time. Help, help, help. Why? And it may go on and on and on to the point that they're hoarse. But we do want to try to determine the cause if we can. This is where we explain what we're doing and what's happening with a reassuring voice. And then you can always go to those therapeutic stories. And those of you who've heard us talk before, we talk about those therapeutic stories. They are lies. Alzheimer's Association calls them biblets, but I've done this before. It does work. A lot of times this will work because we learned it early. Shh, did you hear that? Shh. What was that? I think the baby's sleeping. Shh. Now we're not being ugly. We're not going, I said hush. Shh, listen. And many times they'll get quiet long enough that we can distract. I've got this ice cream over here. Look at that dog. See this baby. I think I hear some music. There's that cookie, and we're leaving the space. But if we can just bring him down to that, shh, did you hear that? Because we learned this early. Shh. And if we start talking in a low voice, that's an old teacher trick too. Start talking in a low voice, then they will get very quiet to hear what you said. They may start to rock, and it's okay for you to hold them and rock with them, because think about what you're doing. You're self-soothing. Overstimulation, this is where we want to be aware of what's going on around us and be careful with the TV. What they used to watch may no longer be appropriate because they may be responding to what's on the TV. We've talked about pain. We've talked about urinary tract infections and physical problems. And I've got on there, urinary tract infections are the #1 reason people have an initial combative behavior. Misinterpreting what is said or done. Again, we talked about breaking everything down into 2 to 5 word sentences. And I know that I'm starting to go fast, but we're also running out of time. You are going to get these slides. So don't worry, you're going to have these slides. So if somebody feels like they're being treated like a child because we do something like use this word, diaper. Adults don't wear diapers. Adults wear briefs. And adults don't wear bibs. Adults wear clothing protectors. That can cause a challenging behavior because we're talking to them like a child. You wouldn't want someone talking to you using your name in a sentence with the word diaper. Well, I've got to run by the store and pick up some of Dad's diapers, and we wonder why he then threw something across the room. Or he said a curse word. Or he did something unusual. We announce they need care. Well, I've got to take Dad to the bathroom. He's had a... That can cause, we may not be stopping to think, but their amygdala is still intact. And so they can understand, we're going to look at a slide next about that amygdala being intact and why they can still understand that. Talked a little bit about being startled. A vacuum cleaner, a garbage disposal, the trash truck outside can startle them. We never want to approach somebody who has dementia from the back or from the side. We always want to come from the front, get it their eye level, be approaching them and smile. having a smile, because their amygdala stays intact. The amygdala is what helps them be able to read your facial expressions, your tone, and your body language. And even though their hippocampus is going away, all those facts are going away, their hippocampus, which controls emotions and feelings, stays intact all the way through the course of the disease. Even after they have a flat affect, they will be able to read you. That's why so many times those combative behaviors that we get, we caused them. We didn't mean to, but we caused them with our own body language or what we said or the look on our face. Now look at this. They do not have impulse control, but we do. They have poor judgment, but we don't. Don't invade their space without announcing yourself. And sometimes they just need to see another face or hear another voice, and we just need to back off. Here I talk about validation therapy and exactly what it is. This is where we use lots of words like okay, regardless of what they say to us. You're the one that took my money, or you're the one that took my money. And so I may respond with, I used to have to do this with a gentleman every day. Okay, I'm calling the bank. I'm taking care of this. And I would call the bank and get it taken care of. I was calling a cell phone, or I was calling the front desk. I wasn't calling the bank, but I was validating that he was having a legitimate feeling. He can't be reasonable or rational anymore, but I can. I can. This is where we use words like I see, tell me more, is that right? Validation therapy. We go to their world. So the next few slides is going to be specific behaviors and intervention for those. So I'm going to go through some of these just real fast so that you can go back and read on them. We've got agitation. We've talked a lot about agitation. Things you can do about keeping a routine. Providing opportunities for socialization is important. Don't ignore agitation though. Try to find the causes of it and deal with it. Here's hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia. We looked at those earlier and why that's happening because of the parts of the brain that are damaged. Specifically with delusions, this is a false belief that can develop about what's going on around them, but it's very real to the person who's experiencing them. For example, they may completely believe that they are on a cruise ship. Well, is that hurting anything? No. So there's no reason to intervene for anything with that. The only time we're going to want to intervene during a delusion, a hallucination, or paranoia is if we are starting to have some of that combative behavior. Otherwise, they're fine. If they're scared, then yes, we want to intervene. Hallucination is visual, auditory, or other sensory illusions that are not seen, heard, tasted, or smelled by other people. The most common hallucinations are sight and sound, and many times these are triggered by TV. A person who's watching something about 9/11 may start to think it's happening right now. Even if that was the kind of shows or movies they watched in the past, we've got to be careful with it. It's especially common with Lewy body dementia and those people who may have Parkinson's disease dementia. This is some on paranoia, which we've talked about, like they forget that they put the money somewhere and then they accuse the family member of taking it. And again, you can use those therapeutic stories with hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia, and many times that is what will work. Here's some more interventions. We're never going to argue though and try to show them or prove that there's not anybody living upstairs. Yes, there is. We're going to evict them for making all that noise. Go to their world. Interventions for a desire to leave. Now, one of the things I do want to put here is if you have somebody who is an elopement risk, make sure that you have, we're going to send you, when you get this, a copy of what's called a first responders handout so that you can have that ready if, God forbid, they ever do walk away or drive away. There's a place for you to put a current picture. Don't put their driver's license photo on there because they probably don't look like that anymore. Put their current picture. And then one of the things that Jamie always teaches about when somebody does, if they get out the door, they're probably going to turn the direction of their dominant hand. So if somebody ever does leave, start looking out the door and to the right or the left, whichever their dominant hand is. So physical interventions, these are only to be used when injury is occurring. If someone is biting, one of the easiest things you can do is say stop in a firm tone, just the word stop. Stop, and then pinch their nose. Don't break their nose, but pinch their nose, because they're going to open their mouth whenever you close their nose. You've got to stop and remember to do that, though. If someone is grabbing or if they are hair pulling, we don't want to pull back. Put your hand over their thumb and pick up their thumb. When you pick up a person's thumb, their hand will open. So grabbing and hair pulling, pick up their thumb. Don't break their thumb, pick up their thumb. These are the 10 behaviors that respond best to medication. I've got those listed there. And sometimes it does take some medication for a short period of time. Usually these are stages that people are going through with combative behaviors. This is that I was telling you about that's going to be a good tool for decoding behaviors. It teaches you on how to walk through what caused the behaviors, how to identify the triggers. And this is more of that. It's 3 pages here all together. I encourage you to use it, share these pages with other people where you sit down and you go, okay, what happened right before? I encourage families to use a journal, keep track of this. What time of day is this behavior happening? Where does it happen? When does it happen? Who was involved? And then go through your checklist. What can we do? Stop and look at who are they as a person? What's their level of dementia? How are they feeling? So it's 3 pages here that will help you decode a combative behavior and hopefully get to where you can prevent it, because the goal is to prevent it. And then summary, all behavior has a purpose and it's triggered. That's why we want to learn to decode it and catch it before it starts. It can be physical, it can be verbal, and it is usually because they are afraid or they feel like they're not in control. So reassuring that person that they're safe and then allowing them as much control as possible. And I've got an example on there that says pills. I had a lady who always wanted her medicine. And she would beat on the nurse's station. So we took a one of those Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we filled it with all different color Tic Tacs. They look like pills. She was perfectly content because she had her pills. She had some control. She felt like she was in control, and it wasn't hurting anything for her to have those Tic Tacs. They need to feel valued. They need to have a purpose. Now think about that one. We weren't going to reason with her that it wasn't time for her medicine. We made it time for her medicine. The medicine just happened to be Tic Tacs. We can't change the person, but we can determine the unmet need, and we can change how we respond to the challenging behavior. And the last sentence, I encourage you to put this up somewhere so you can see it. The person with dementia isn't giving you a hard time. They are having a hard time. There's our information. I know we are right at time. I didn't see anything pop up in the chat, but if anybody does have any questions, if you want to stay on or if you want to unmute, you can unmute or you can put in the chat. Otherwise, you will get a copy of all of the slides and you'll get our upcoming education calendar. Jamie's going to put a copy of that handout for searchers that I was talking about. Those are fantastic. Please share those. Those come from the Rosalind Carter Institute. And do it now. Don't wait till you need it. Do it now if your loved one is still at home, because you never know. Don't want to do it when you're in crisis. Jamie, is there anything else you would like to add?
I can't think of anything. Just be looking for that email this afternoon, and we would love to see y'all on a future program.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Bye.